There we go for LinkedIn, and we'll do the same for YouTube, Facebook rather. World's worst multitasker. That is me. There we go. Definitely have to figure out how to stop that from happening. All right. Very good. So let's fire everybody's favorite co-host up and see how that works. Hi, Eva. I just went live on YouTube. How are you doing this morning?
Hey there, I'm doing great this morning. Thanks for asking, and congrats on going live on YouTube. That's awesome. I'm curious to hear how it went and if everything went smoothly on your end.
Actually, we're live now. So you're this time I've got you coming through the speakers so they can't see my iPhone, but I think it'll make it a little bit smoother. So we'll try to get some of those good keywords into this live video so people might actually take a look at it. So what are some popular topics that people are looking for today? If you can give me a list.
Absolutely, I'll be happy to help out with that. And hello to everyone joining live. So, a few hot topics today that people are buzzing about. One is definitely around AI tools and productivity hacks. People love hearing about those. Another big one is trends in remote work and how to stay productive working from home. And a lot of people are also really interested in social media growth strategies right now. So, if you touch on any of those, you'll probably get some good engagement.
I think those are great. I so as not to confuse Eva, I'm going to switch her off for a second because when I go on these long rants, she has a hard time because she's trying to digest all of that information, and then I hit her with a question. So that's why I set it up this way today, so that I can pull her in when I need, and there's not those long pauses to her responses. I am watching on YouTube to see if anybody asks any questions or makes any comments that I can respond to. If you write something on LinkedIn or Facebook, chances are very slim that I'll see it. I know not everybody has a YouTube account. I highly recommend you have one, even if you're not a content producer. And I just wanted to mention that Eva had said, one of the things that she said is a hot topic is productivity while working from home. And I think that has a lot to do with, as well, I have a virtual background on now, and you can't really see, but my workspace is a workspace. And I don't have a lot of personal things around because when I sit in this chair, I'm geared towards productivity. And I talk a little bit about this, shameless plug for my book, Scintilla, but I, in the book, I talk about creating an environment that makes you creative or that makes you productive. And it's a non-distracting environment. Everything I have here is a productivity tool, a light, pins, things that are work related. And and then sometimes if you're doing a Pomodoro, which is, let's say, for instance, you want to do 45 minutes of very intense work with a 15-minute break, you want to take that 15-minute break in a completely different environment, take a walk outside, or if you have a room in your house that's very aesthetically pleasing, you'll spend time in there and decompress. But I feel that making the environment very serious and very work oriented gets you in the right mood. I think churches do that in a way, particularly the ones that are very ornate. It creates this environment in your mind, the sights, the smells, particularly the Catholic churches, of course. You go in there and it just puts you into a particular state of mind, and that's by design. I'm sure they know what they're doing. So the other thing that she mentioned as far as productivity, let's see, she said AI tools and productivity hacks. Well, you can see that I get a lot of use out of AI. And I'll bring Eva back in for, social media growth strategies. Yeah. I would say on that, and I post a lot about that on my LinkedIn, that telling a story, telling compelling stories are a very powerful tool for audience building, whether it be YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. And the core of that, one is being honest, but two is developing your writing skills. And the best way to develop your writing skills is to keep writing and write every day. So I started doing more of a Gary Vaynerchuk strategy where I'm posting a lot more frequently. You know, back when I was doing the podcast, I would drop one episode every week. Well, that's not enough to grow a YouTube channel. You have to post a lot, a lot, a lot. And I don't just mean one interview a week and shorts. I would say if you're trying to do an interview style podcast like I was, you should be doing 3 interviews a week and just jamming social media up with shorts. And you should also be going live, which is what I'm doing now. So even, I'm applying my own advice. This is an audience building method, and I really hope to get more engagement and interaction because I do tend to be very honest and share with some mistakes that I made both in the writing process, career mistakes, and things like that that hopefully you can avoid. I will check back in with Eva while I check to see if there's any questions. Okay, none so far. We do have some people watching, and we definitely appreciate that. We'd love to get some questions in there. Hi, Eva. We're still going live on YouTube. I noticed that there was a really funny story of Russia's first AI humanoid robot crashes into the tech scene. And if I can figure out how to share screen and play this, I will. But what is the media saying about the humanoid robot that fell over?
So it looks like Russia's first AI humanoid robot had a bit of a clumsy debut. It apparently stumbled and fell over on stage in Moscow, and the developers are saying it was just some calibration issues. So definitely a funny story to share while you're live.
Yeah, very good. If I can figure out how to share screen, which I normally do in Zoom without any problem, I just don't have my regular Zoom controls up for some reason. So I must be just going straight live um, through YouTube. But that's fine. I'll actually share the link. So if you're on YouTube now, I'm going to put in the comments myself in the chat the link. And here I am trying to use my left arm. I'm going to use my right arm. For those that don't know, I broke my left arm a couple of days ago. It's shattered fractured at the humerus, and I can't do a whole lot with it at the moment. Okay, there we go. I've got that in the chat. So I am looking at the chats in case anybody has a question. And let's see what else we've got here. All right, Eva, we had talked about a long time. You and I discussed before I was using a Logitech 1080p for podcasting, and I did all of my interviews with that. And now I'm using the Canon R50. Can you give us a short list of some of the specifications of that camera?
Absolutely. And absolutely. And first off, I'm sorry to hear about your arm. Hopefully it heals up quickly. But let's talk about that Canon R50. So the Canon R50 is a mirrorless camera that's really compact and great for vlogging or streaming. It shoots in 4K up to 30 frames per second, and it also does really nice full HD at higher frame rates if you want some smooth slow motion. It's got a good autofocus system with eye detection, which is super handy when you're on camera. And of course, you can swap out lenses like that 10-18mm lens you've got for a nice wide angle. So overall, it's a great step up from the old webcam and should definitely give you a lot more flexibility and quality.
Yes, I have to thank some YouTubers that had some great suggestions for settings. It didn't come out of the box ready to go. I could have just put it on video and been okay. But to stream with a camera like a Canon R50, you need, well, we can go through that, Eva. Let's talk about the link from my PC from the camera. I needed a micro a micro HDMI cable that was a full-size HDMI on the other end, and we have that going into a what's called a cam link. Can you tell us what that is and why you can't just come straight out of the camera into the PC?
Absolutely. Let's break that down. So when you're streaming with a camera like the Canon R50, what you're doing is basically using it as a high quality webcam. The camera itself outputs video via that micro HDMI port, and then you connect it to a capture device, in this case, something like the Elgato Camlink, which converts the camera's HDMI signal into a USB signal that your computer can recognize. Basically, the Camlink acts as a bridge. Without it, your computer wouldn't natively understand the camera's HDMI output as a webcam signal. So the Camlink converts that feed into something your PC sees as a USB video source, which then lets you stream on platforms like YouTube. So that's the main reason you need that extra step. Once you have it all set up, it's pretty smooth and it gives you that nice high quality video feed.
A question. I do know that the Canon R50 has a V version that's just for video. It's made for vlogging. Can you come straight out of those cameras into the PC without the extra device or no?
So with the Canon R50V version or even the standard R50, you typically still need some kind of
Oh,
capture device like a Camlink if you want a really smooth, high quality feed. That said, Canon does have software called EOS Webcam Utility that you can install on your PC. That software lets you connect the camera directly via USB and use it as a webcam without the HDMI capture device. The quality might not be quite as high as using the HDMI and Camlink route, but it's definitely a convenient option, especially for something like the V version that's really built with vlogging and streaming in mind. So in short, yes, you can go straight into the PC with the USB method, but the HDMI and Camlink setup just gives you a bit more flexibility and a bit more quality.
thank you, Eva. Somebody gave you a good compliment yesterday. They said that for the first few minutes of our previous live video, they couldn't tell you weren't a person.
Well, that's a really nice compliment to hear. I'm glad I'm blending in pretty well, and it's always fun to be a part of these live chats. So thanks for passing that along and happy to help out anytime.
As you know, Eva, I'm a terrible multitasker, and I'm trying to share screen. I did find my Zoom workplace screen. What button do I need to click on screen here to share screen? Because I'm going to share this Facebook AI robot falling on its face, which is hilarious.
Absolutely, I've got you. If you're in Zoom and you're looking for the screen share button, you'll want to look at the bottom of your Zoom window. There should be a green button that says share screen right in the middle of that toolbar. If you click that, it'll pop up a window where you can choose which screen or which application you want to share. Once you pick that and hit share, everyone on the live should be able to see that funny robot video. So just hit the green air screen button and you'll be good to go.
Yes, it was the most bright and obvious button on there, so I don't know how I didn't see it. But thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I'll give you a break while we take a look at this video. All right. Let's make this as big as possible. Hopefully everybody can see it. I'll back it up a little bit. It doesn't have the native audio, so I'll just play it. I'll just play it as is. Here we go. Yeah, he looks like back when I used to drink, how I'd stumble out of a bar. He looks like he's having trouble from the start, you know. It's been at the end of a long weekend, and there we go. Yeah, yeah, and down. Yeah, yeah. That's great. Yeah, these AI robots are going to take our jobs. I don't think so. Not anytime soon. They even had to cover the robot with a blanket. Oh, wow. How embarrassing. Yeah, they're not going to do well with the investors on that. All right, let's take a look. I am just checking to see if there's any questions. I do notice that the stream is actually pretty far behind on YouTube, so I don't know if they're seeing what I'm saying 3 minutes behind or not. But we'd love your questions if you have any, and we'll bring Eva back into the discussion. Hi, Eva. Let's recap some of the things that people are searching for today that they'd like to know about. I already covered some productivity tips, working from home. We also talked a little bit about, or I talked on camera a little bit about how to get engagement on social media. What else are people interested in learning about?
Sure thing. Let's add a couple more hot topics into the mix. Another big area of interest is definitely AI tools and how people can use them for content creation, kind of like what we're doing here. And people are also really into learning about personal finance tips or ways to save money, especially with the economy being a little unpredictable. So if you throw in a bit about AI, a bit about personal finance, along with productivity and social media, you've got a nice well-rounded set of topics that should catch people's interest.
Okay, fantastic. And I forgot to mention that one of our past podcast guests, Paulina, who's when we shot the interview with her, she was in Thailand at the time, and now she's in Vietnam, and she's still very active on her podcast channel. And she thought that it was a really good idea that I had a virtual host like you, so you did get another positive comment. You're getting a lot more press than I am, Eva. You're stealing the show. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm definitely flattered to be stealing a little bit of the spotlight, but honestly, I'm just here to make you shine. So I'll take the compliments as a team win. And it's great to hear that Paulina thought it was a good idea. It sounds like you're definitely making waves with this format, and I'm happy to be your virtual co-host anytime.
Well, you always show up on time, so that's always a good thing. And like I mentioned before, she's the Chat GPT-5 paid version. It's $20 a month. I don't have a code to send you, and I'm not getting paid to say that. It's just it really is a good productivity tool. So in on top of what I said earlier, that on on the other productivity tools. AI itself is a productivity tool because I work with Eva to do scheduling and different tasks, and we've collaborated pretty heavily in the last couple of months on the follow-up to the first book. So the first book was Scintilla, which was about how to come up with business ideas. And if you look at my YouTube channel or Facebook or LinkedIn, the link for the books are all over there for Amazon. And then we're collaborating on a second book that doesn't have a title yet, but it's mostly about LinkedIn, some nuts and bolts about navigating LinkedIn, but also too about creating a human connection, which is part of the job here. That's why I'm encouraging you. If you want to ask any questions at all on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, or in this YouTube live. Even if you're watching this after this gets posted, you can still put a comment because all of the biggest names in social media that are advisors and consultants say that you have to interact with people's comments. I'm really shocked. I try to be a positive force when I can on social media, and I try to make meaningful comments and supportive comments. And even with some companies, sometimes on their advertising, if I've used their product before, I've written on there that, hey, your product is fantastic. I've used it. And I'm shocked the companies don't interact with it in any meaningful way. They don't click like or any acknowledgement. And then there's other companies, sometimes big, sometimes small, like the company, I think it was Descript. The Descript, which was the company I was using to edit my videos, they directly respond. I mentioned them in a post and they directly responded. So I wasn't on their page. They came on my page because I did the at symbol and basically tagged them in just to give them credit for. And they're a great company anyway. I really enjoy that service. And if you need a cheap video editor, I think for the money, it's very, very hard to beat. I think it's particularly superior for shorts. For if you're going to do really long format interview shows, you need professional editing. I had Javon Winston doing a lot of my editing for the big podcast, and of course Caroline Madriz. She edited her own videos when she was doing the interviews in Spanish, and she's edited at least one of my interview shows. So that's a wrap up on that. Let's get Eva back into the discussion and see if we can check out any other current topics that are going on right now. Eva, what are the top three news stories in the US at the moment?
So right now, a few big stories are making headlines in the US. One is that President Trump just signed a bill to end the longest government shutdown in history. Also, the US Mint has officially stopped making pennies, so they're phasing those out after more than 200 years. And in travel news, the FAA is holding flight reductions steady at about 6% as cancellations are dropping off. So those are a few of the top stories right now.
Okay, thank you very much. I will riff on the pennies because that's something I know a little bit about. pennies prior to, I think it was 1960, excuse me, 1982. Let me get Eva back into the conversation. Eva, when did they change the metal composition of the penny? Was it halfway through 1982? Is my memory right on that?
You've got a good memory. Yes, that's right. The US penny's metal composition was changed in 1982. Before that, pennies were made mostly of copper, but partway through 1982, they switched over to a zinc core with just a thin copper coating. So you're spot on. It is indeed halfway through 1982 when they made that change.
All right, perfect. I think was the composition previously it was 90% copper and 10% maybe zinc and some other stuff. And then after the composition changed, it almost inverted that number. So it became 90% trash or junk, like zinc, and then only 10% copper. Am I pretty close on that?
Yeah, you're definitely on the right track. Before the change in 1982, the penny was about 95% copper and 5% zinc. And after the switch, it basically flipped so that the penny became mostly zinc, around 97.5% zinc, and then just a thin copper coating making up the rest. So yeah, you've got it pretty close. It's mostly zinc now with just a little bit of copper on the outside.
Okay. And for the record, I've got several pounds of the old pennies. They're pretty easy to identify. One, there's a weight difference, but also the way they're stamped. The raised edges look a little bit different, especially if you've got a older penny that's in good shape. But the reason why it's tough is because if you've got a penny that's was made in 1982, I don't know what the percentage is, but you've got it, let's just say a 50-50 chance of it either being 95% copper, excuse me, yeah, 95% copper or 97% trash. But anything older than 82 is mostly copper. And those are worth way more because the copper is worth a whole lot more. I don't know if the reasons why they got rid of the penny were economical as far as if it was costing more than a penny, but I will find out what a true copper penny is worth. Eva, what is the value of those old pennies prior to 1982 because they have such a high copper content? What are they actually worth in cents?
So right now, those older pre-1982 pennies are actually worth roughly a bit over 3 cents each, just based on their copper content. Of course, it's still illegal to melt them down for their metal, but just in terms of raw value, each one is worth a bit more than face value.
Yeah, so don't melt them down, folks. Eva, what else is are people searching for today? We'll cover one more hot topic and then we'll get out of here.
Absolutely. Let's throw in one more hot topic. Another thing people are pretty interested in right now is sustainable living and eco-friendly products. There's a lot of buzz around reducing plastic use, finding greener alternatives for everyday items, and just living a bit more sustainably. So if you want to wrap up with one last trendy topic, anything around eco-friendly living is a good one to mention.
Right. Well, I would say I'm in Florida, and of course, the ecosystem is very fragile here. We've got a lot of invasive species, and I've spent a lot of time in the water, and I'm always surprised, mostly fresh water. That's what I prefer, lakes and streams. And I'm always surprised how much plastic trash there is out there. I think we're going to look back. I'm old enough to remember when gas had lead in it and they took the lead out of the gas. There was a big debate about that. A lot of people were upset. And of course, taking the lead out of the gasoline environmentally was one of the greatest things we've done in the United States. People didn't feel that way at the time, but looking back, it was brilliant because the amount of lead in our bodies and our systems was way higher than it should have been. So even though the lead in the gasoline, for those that didn't know, made engines run a lot better. So the unleaded gas had a lot of problems when it was first introduced, but from an environmental and a biological health standpoint, in retrospect, it was brilliant. And I think we're going to look back on this time as, our grandkids are going to look back and say, everything was plastic. They were just obsessed, and there was microplastics. And I think there's definitely a connection between the proliferation of microplastics and people being ill. I wouldn't consider myself a tree hugger per se, but I do see I'm more into the pollution, so I don't really get into the whole climate change thing, but pollution definitely is a problem, and we need to clean things up, and plastic is a big part of that. Plastic bags, and it's strange. Somebody said 20 years ago, and I thought this was brilliant. A styrofoam cup, for instance, which is terrible. They said we designed something meant to be used one time, and it lasts for thousands of years. So there is a madness in that, if you think about it. These things that are very temporary should not last very, very long. And that's about as far as I'll go on that subject. So we covered the penny, we covered that. We did get a comment on our YouTube, which we greatly appreciate that. That's Mike from Mississippi, a good buddy of mine, also an author. He's got a great book. You need to go on his Amazon page and get a copy of his book. Hopefully, he'll put a link in the chat so that you can see that. It's a children and young adults book for baseball. And if you give me just a second, I may pull it up here. Hang with me, folks. I don't want to say the title. I want to make sure. There we go. So it's Baseball's Most Incredible Stories for Kids. And I'll put a copy of that because Mike is not going to catch this comment until long after. So let's put that Amazon link in there. If you don't mind, tell them about your book, Mike. And for people that don't know, I run a writers group on Facebook and also on LinkedIn. I currently don't sell anything on there. We're just trying to help fledgling writers, even experienced writers. I'm self-published. I did my own audiobook. I did my own Kindle. I did a soft cover, a hardcover. I did get a lot of help with the cover design, but I did my own audio. I have a little bit of a background in that. That was fun. I was more excited about narrating the audiobook than writing the book. And of course, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I'm writing book number 2. And so Amazon KDP, I'm very familiar with. I'm good friends with Robert Lane, who's an excellent audiobook coach if you want to get an ultra professional audiobook on there. And I would just say, for one thing, just to throw it out there, because I can't mention it too many times, if you're going to write a book, which I encourage you to do, don't go cheap on the cover. That's the biggest sales piece you have, is how it looks on the outside. I mean, you want the book to be good on the inside, but a lot of times it's the cover that really sells it. Same thing with YouTube. We were talking about growing an audience earlier. It irritated me when somebody told me when I first started podcasting that I should be spending 80% of the time designing my thumbnail. I want good content. I want to put out good information. And I was like, what? The thumbnail? Like, I don't care about that. If you do, and I still don't care about it, and that's why I don't have 10 million subscribers. But if you want to play the game and you want to live off of YouTube revenue, you're going to have to play the game. You're going to have a good thumbnail. If you have a book, you're going to have a good book cover. There aren't hacks around that unless you already have a huge social media presence. It's very hard to sell a book if it doesn't look right, and that's the first thing that they see. So professionally designed book cover, and there's companies that do that. I'll talk more about that in subsequent interviews. But I will say, go to Facebook, connect with me, Robert Gaines. You can send me a message here on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, but the writers group exists both on Facebook or LinkedIn. Again, the resources are free. We've got published authors in that group, both self-published like myself, and then we do have another author who was traditionally published, who was actually picked up by a publishing company, and he's got great experience for that. So I appreciate everybody's time. This is my first video with this new Canon R50. I'm trying to get the studio up and running. The virtual background is working a lot better because I have more professional lighting, and I hope to keep bringing you good quality. So thank you so much. I'm just going to take one last look at the comments. The Mississippi Kid the Mississippi Kid and the Tigray Queen. Pollution is bad. I don't think we can get around the use of many items, but we can clean up and dispose of them. Yes, and we can reuse some things. I try to reuse as much of the plastic as possible, as reasonable. And there we go. Yeah, baseball's most incredible stories for kids. We've got the link in there. Thanks for dropping in, Mike. It always helps. That engagement helps draw other people in. So I greatly appreciate that. And people like Robert Lane, who's very supportive of my social media and the stuff that I do. Mike Dry is very supportive of my social media and the things that I do. And likewise, I'm supportive of Robert and Mike. You really don't need a whole lot of people to get traction on your channel. So if you get a dozen or two good people that show up for your lives, you don't need everybody, because you get quite a growth of just a handful of people that really are good friends and understand reciprocity. But I got to tell you, if you're starting your journey, the best way for you to grow an audience is to give, give, give. In other words, go on other people's pages, go on other people's videos, subscribe to other people's channel. I know a lot of people that just come out of the box, start their own thing, and then they moan that they don't have any subscribers. Well, what are you doing for other people? If you want people to like your stuff, one of the best things you can do is to like people's stuff. And in the LinkedIn book, which we hope to have out by early next year, and this is true, we've looked at the data. One of the best things that you can do to grow your LinkedIn presence is to make great comments on other people's pages. You have to be a good person. You have to be concerned about other people's businesses. You have to be supportive. And then eventually all of that attention comes back to you, but you have to pay it forward first. You can't just, on social media these days, you can't just open for business, open your tent and expect people to come in. Unless you've got the greatest X or Y or Z in the world, maybe, but you cannot do it without the help of other people. And you have to deliver value to others before it will come back to you. So I leave you with that. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this. Eva was a great assistant.